discussion about music, education, technology, and teaching and the future of learning, brought to you by Solfeggio. I am Gillian Desmarais, a music teacher from Pioneer Charter School, which is a middle school in Everett, Massachusetts. And I'm also a graduate student at NYU. And today we are inviting on the podcast John Liner, who is a musician, educator, incredible inspiration to so many students and so many other influencers out there. And we're so excited to have you here from Texas. John, please, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you teach?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on. I'm really thrilled to be asked to be a part of this. My name is John Liner. I am, by trade, by day, I'm an educator. I'm a band director in a suburb of Houston, Texas called Katy. Teach middle school band there. I work with some of the high school marching bands out here, do some arranging and things like that. But my primary focus right now is teaching the kiddos and trying to get ready for this school year.
Oh my goodness, right? And it's a big task to take on. I'm sure all of us teachers are feeling that, but we're all in it together, which makes it all the better, right?
Absolutely.
So I want you to get into a little bit about your experience. So how did you grow to pursue the career that you're in now, whether it be as a musician or a teacher? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Oh, goodness. Getting to be a teacher was, music is running my family. And I also come from a family of teachers. Like my mom's a teacher, my dad was a teacher, my aunt was like everybody seemed to be a teacher. So it was kind of like it was in my blood. But it was funny because I was supposed to be a Division I athlete, getting recruited to play college football. And then some injuries happened. And, I was a really good musician. And so as things came and God kind of guided my path, it was like, well, you're going to be a music educator. And that's one really cool thing I love about education is it's not just one thing. It's not just teaching is not the only form of education. There's also mentorship and there's coaching and there's this and that. Like there's a lot of ways. And so, growing through high school and college, I was able to coach the football team. I was able to do different things where I could foster my love for education. And, when I love music, I love education, put those things together and got a music educator.
That's beautiful. I mean, the progression is wonderful. And I want you to also tell us a little bit about, so you eventually, when you graduated college from Berkeley, you ended up getting this position with your school as being an English teacher, which is, it must have felt so uncomfortable, honestly. I mean, if I had gone through 4 or 5 years of studying so hard to be a musician and a teacher in music, and then be asked to teach English, I would be scratching my head. I would be hiding under my bed. It just, oh my goodness. So tell us a little bit about how that influenced the position you're in now, which to my knowledge, you are the fine arts coordinator at your school, which is incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how did that matriculate? Tell us, a little bit about how maybe that has improved your teaching and such.
Yeah. So funny story. I was a state ranked poet in high school. And so I did, tons of competitions and I did all the poetry, all the classics, in high school. And in college, I kind of got involved, I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I, even though I was doing my majors, I was studying 2 things for my majors, and for my minor, I chose poetry. And so I was still studying different forms of literature in college for the first 2 years. So interestingly enough, upon graduation, I was looking for the next job. I was actually looking at being a college football coach. So we were looking at, being a college football coach or being an English teacher or being a band director. And those are really my 2 options. And, I go to the job fair and the particular person that was looking into hiring me, they kind of laid out like, this is what I have for you. You can teach band, but you're also going to have to teach English. And I thought about it and I was like, well, I do remember some poetry and I feel like, I read some books fairly regularly. I feel like I can do this. And so, I accepted and I dug into the books and started studying and making sure that I was ready to teach. And then, now I'm the fine arts department chair, as well as being one of the band directors at Morton Ranch Junior High School here in Katy, Texas. And it's interesting because my year teaching English and teaching band really helped shape my philosophy around education and really helped shape me as a teacher. It goes back to what I kind of said earlier about education comes in many different forms. And it's very, very true, because even teaching English, the only difference, and this might be a little controversial, hot take, the only difference between teaching English and band is the content. We're still teaching a form of literacy in music. And in English, all we're teaching is literacy at a higher level, and when kids are 5 and 6, we're teaching them how to read, how to see a word on sight, say this word. In beginning band, all right, here we go. Everybody play B flat for 4 counts. It's the same exact concept. It's just that when we get to English, when we get to their 10th year, 12th year of playing, for English, their 10th or 12th year of speaking, they're in middle school. And as public school educators, we usually don't see their 10th or 12th year of playing. We see their 1st through 7th. So it's really helped shape, because we talk about literacy a lot, and there's a lot of different techniques in the English classroom that we use there that we aren't using in the band world, and vice versa, that we use in the band world that we don't use in the English classroom, that have really helped me to kind of widen my scope and teach, for lack of a better term, with a more holistic approach to music. Yeah.
Wow. And to go on what you're saying with language, you mentioned last time we were talking about a few of the people who have influenced you as a musician, and how their techniques in jazz and using it as sort of a language style of teaching is really effective, and has kind of shaped these new forms of teaching with jazz, especially, with Berklee and their methods, and I'm sure with, individuals too. We're going to get into that. But also, too, I think a good thing to mention, like you were kind of leading towards, was the scaffolding. That's huge, right? So how did the scaffolding really differentiate between the English and band?
So it's fascinating, because in the English classroom, we have our little smart board or whiteboard, and, we'd make little presentations. And, the team I was with, we'd have a slideshow that was created. And I was like, man, what can I do to make it even simpler for the kids so we can go step by step? So even the kids that because what's crazy in the English classroom is the classroom management security that we have in band is fabulous, because, if you have the kids playing the whole class period, there's not a whole lot of room to mess around.
Right.
English class, and if a kid doesn't behave or they don't want to follow the band rules, they'll get removed from the program. But in the English classroom, they have to take English. There's no instrument to their face. So you have to find a way to engage them. But secondarily, when it comes to scaffolding, you have to make sure the kid understands it. Otherwise, we have kids who can't write emails, kids who can't spell, kids who can't even complete a full sentence. So when we got those slideshows, I wanted to break it down to the most basic point of the slideshow and then go piece by piece. So if we were teaching thesis statement, I'd break the thesis statement into 3 parts, and each of those parts I'd break down into subsections. So, putting it into musical terms, like if we're all learning to play a B flat scale in beginning trumpet class, instead of me teaching, okay, here's B flat, C, D, E, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give them small little chunks and make sure everybody can achieve it. And that in English class, it really, because in English class, I saw them every single day. I saw them for 45 minutes every single time. And I got to see their work. They got to turn in their work to me. So I saw their work daily, every single day. In band class, we hear the ensemble. So, there's some kids who can hide and stuff like that.
Right.
It also taught me about differentiation and how to listen to the individual kid, or listen to the individual kid as making an effort to get my ears in front of every kid's bells every single day, to make sure that the kids are progressing as they should.
Beautiful. This is all great. It was wonderful to hear about your experience and how that kind of led you into teaching music. Now, I want to hear a little bit more about the musicians and the educators that continue to inspire and influence your work. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's tons of people, too many to name, but the couple that just immediately come to mind, one was my 2nd grade teacher. It wasn't my music teacher, it was just a teacher. And she's the first person first educator that really poured into me and really believed in me. She called me Mr. President every day, Mr. President. And, she really believed I could be something. And I didn't know what that something was. But she just made me believe I could be something. And to this day, I still keep in contact with her, and she's just a great positive influence. And that certainly helped me later on. Funnily enough, I wound up being like class president for, I don't know, from 8th grade to senior year of high school. So it's kind of cool to see that. Then musically, my middle school band director, his name is Rory Davis, one of the finest band directors in the country. And he really helped me as a musician. He really pushed me to be my very best as a musician and as a person. Taught me about character, humility, about maturity, all things that I preach to my kiddos about even now. And so he really helped shape me into the musician I am today. And to this day, he's my mentor. He's still coaching me along, still whipping me into shape. Also, he's a Black man, and to me, that's really, really important. If you look at the teaching landscape, out of all the teachers in the United States, 2% are Black. 2% are Black males. And so to have him as my teacher, and the fact that he's one of the best in the country, it's really powerful. I'm really thankful to God for that opportunity. As far as professional musicians who've kind of inspired me, Wycliffe Gordon, Wynton Marsalis, Louis Armstrong, those are like my cats. I'm a trumpet player. That's my primary instrument. Wycliffe Gordon is one of the baddest trombone players you'll hear. And he's a mean tuba player too, but he's primarily known for his trombone playing. And I listen to him tons, love his sound. And then Wynton Marsalis, some say he's the greatest trumpet player to ever live. And I got hooked on him. They played like the Hummel Concerto, and he was playing the finale, and we listened to that in class. And boy, I didn't know what it was, but I was like, man, that sounds cool. And so that's kind of where I started listening to Wynton Marsalis, and just him and Wycliffe's approach to jazz and to teaching is something that I'm really passionate about, because they treat it truly like a language. And when we treat music like a language, I think that kids are far more successful. When we talk about language, we don't talk about a kid, playing a wrong note, and then we say, "Oh, that's okay." You don't really hear a band director say that. But when a baby is starting out to learn how to speak, it's going, and we're like, "Yes, keep going. You're doing good." You said dada. Yes, keep going, baby. And it's a real positive, reinforcing environment. And then several years later down the road, they can read, they can write, they can speak, all at a very proficient level. However, when we start our beginners out, what I frequently see is it's a lack of encouragement, a lack of positivity towards the kids. And I'm not saying lower your standards. I'm not saying lower your accountability levels. But I do believe that positivity and that encouragement to the kids, even the worst kid, the kid, that still can't make an embouchure after the 5th month, maybe consider changing their instrument. But, we should be really encouraging it. And those two talk about that quite a bit. And then I got to talk about who I think is the greatest trumpet player of all time, Louis Armstrong.
Yes.
In my house growing up, we could only listen to gospel music or classical music. There was no secular records, no jazz, no nothing. And when I started playing the trumpet, my parents got me a Louis Armstrong compilation CD. I was like, oh, wow. I played that thing so much the CD would not play anymore. Like, it was like I played the snot out of it. I mean, he's just, I don't know. I just absolutely love the work that he does. And he really paved the way for not only trumpet players, but also Black musicians and band leaders, because it was not a thing, really, when he started out playing. The Black musicians couldn't do what he was doing on such a large scale. So it's amazing to see what he did and how he paved the way for so many other musicians.
Right. And Wycliffe Gordon is a perfect example. I mean, how much he was inspired by Louis Armstrong. He talks in an interview on YouTube about the keyhole blues and, how that inspired his playing. And it's amazing. Wycliffe Gordon can make the trombone sound like a trumpet. And that, to me, is like unbelievable, because you're reaching into like a totally different stratosphere of trombone playing. Just like based on how it's been used in traditional ensembles and in jazz ensembles, it has a very specific timbre. But when you can practice it enough to manipulate its timbre and make it mimic other instruments, I mean, How cool is that?
You know, he can make that thing talk. He can make it sing. I mean, he's a big proponent of this thing called it's not a big. It's sing it first. He says sing it first, sing it first, sing it first. And if you listen to him, it sounds like somebody is like, did you hide a little human inside the bell of that trombone? You know, he's really incredible. He's the real deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, shout out to your band director there. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. To see that you all grown up now too, that must be, a step back for them to be like, wow, to see what incredible music educator can come out of their program. So beautiful. So I want to delve into this project that you started 4 or 5 years ago when you were at Berklee College. You put together a series of Berklee musicians and you did an arrangement of The Circle of Life from The Lion King. I want you to kind of get into this. We're going to show a clip now. It's the circle of life. And then I want us to kind of maybe get into some details about how maybe an educator or a musician can create a video of their own, possibly with their students or with musicians that they know. So can you talk a little bit about that for us, please? Yeah,
no problem. Back in my undergrad at Berklee, I was in a musical theater arranging and orchestration class with this wonderful professor named Jerry Sykes. And, it came time for us to start our final projects. She said, all right, make sure you've chosen your Broadway musical and chosen the song. Of course, I hadn't done this. And so she gets to me and I was like, well, I was thinking about The Lion King doing The Circle of Life, but they had 5 drummers. And the problem with having 5 drummers is in our setup, we only had a drum set player and a percussionist. So I was like, we're 3 short. She's like, great, you're doing The Circle of Life. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to figure this out.
That's a teacher for you.
But, I'm so glad you said that because, I did the project and it was pretty good. And it starts out in a totally different language. So I'm not a person to kind of go halfway because I could have just got my friends to do it. And I was like, no, I got to do this right. So Berklee is a very diverse population. I believe more than 40% of their student population are international students. And a number of those are students from sub-Saharan Africa. And the languages pulled for The Circle of Life come from sub-Saharan African countries. And so I reached out to my friends like, yeah, I speak this. And so I was able to get with them and they kind of broke it down. This is what you do. This is how you say it. These are the inflections. And that's how I got on the boat and they taught me and I got them to sing and we got in the studio and we recorded the final project. And I was like, man, what if I could do this professional? I can get a whole video team together and we can get really record it right. I could expand the orchestras as well. That's what I did. And so I reorchestrated my reorchestration of what they had for The Circle of Life and on Broadway. And I, bought some studio time at a local studio and, assembled a team. And by the time I got the team together, we had near about 100 folks that were involved with the project from all over the world. I'm talking 6 different continents were involved with this thing 5 different continents were involved to make this thing happen. And I'm so thrilled about it. And it's funny because when I watch music videos when I was younger, I used to think they recorded everything at the same time and everybody was in the same room. I just thought it just makes sense. No. So when I, recording this, you have to, it's like a cake. You got to record it, a layer cake, not just like any cake, a layered cake. So you get the layered cake and you have to lay down the plate first because if you don't have a plate, you're on the cabinet. That's weird. And so, and after the plate, you get, your first cake, then your second cake, then some frosting, then another cake, then another frosting, then another cake. I like frosting, then another frosting, then the sprinkles, right? It's strategic. And it's the same way with recording. We had to record the rhythm section. So the drums, the piano, bass, we recorded those 5 people at one time. Then we were like, okay, what's next? Then we had to record the strings. So we recorded just the strings. Then we recorded just woodwinds. Then we recorded just the brass. Then after all that, we recorded the background vocals, then we recorded the lead vocals. And after all of that, once all that was recorded, then we recorded the video, because the video that's actually happening, they're actually lip syncing. So they're lip syncing to they're lip syncing to a track that we had previously recorded. So it's a process. But here's good news for educators: if you're trying to do a project like this, you totally can. And in fact, I think you can do it way simpler, because there's plenty of things I would have done differently. But either you're right or you have a kid that writes, heck, you can give them a world-class experience. All you need is your iPhone, a little tripod, and one little microphone. And if you have that, that's a great place to start. If you want to record anything, and, to protect yourself from copyright, make sure it's like an educational thing, post it where only the kids can hear it, that kind of deal. But you could totally get your band together and record the movie theme, and, show the video without music to it. Or there's ways you can do it without being so intensive. And if you have a really talented group of kids, you absolutely could do it where you really record for real. And you give the kids a world-class opportunity there. So.
And honestly, like, you should watch the entire thing. I mean, it's really just spot on with the arrangement itself. And then also, I mean, you timed the release of this too to be, was it around April or May, somewhere around there?
Well, yeah.
Was it somewhere around? Yeah. And I think like it spoke to me as a way of like it being able to bring so many different diverse musicians together, which is kind of a mantra right now for schools, for everyone. Being able to have that kind of inclusion is essential in music.
I'm so glad you said that, because right now, I think more than ever, we're realizing just how connected the world is. And I founded the Virtual Band Director Conference. It's a podcast, YouTube station, all those kinds of things. Folks, go check it out. But through that, over this COVID break, if you will, I was able to reach people on 6 different continents in almost all 50 states. I was able to bring in clinicians from all over the United States that normally it would have just been a phone call or a FaceTime one-to-one. But instead, we were able to reach thousands of people. This is the time. If you want to reach out to somebody, go do it. It's a great time, and educators are so giving. They're so willing to share.
Yeah. And they're so flexible too. Mm-hmm. Like this type of project is certainly not out of reach. I mean, I give credit to all of the educators out there who put together these amazing virtual choir and virtual ensemble pieces, which are extremely impressive and incredibly difficult. Speaking as a like music technologist, it really is difficult. It took me a year and a half to really grasp Logic, to extreme. And, these educators are doing it in, a month. So kudos to you, really. And musicians too.
Yeah. One thing that's really been on my brain the last couple of days is this idea of like unicorn leadership. It sounds crazy. I don't even know if it's a real term, but unicorn it's one of a kind. And I really think that education, like educators, master educators, are really going to have to become unicorns. And it sounds silly, but the skill sets that we're going to need to be educators is evolving literally right before our eyes. And in order to provide our kids like the best possible experience, I really believe that the skill sets that we're using now for these sessions and the online learning are going to be extremely vital, especially for the incoming educators that are new to the profession, to gain these skills or learn about it now, because it's going to be heavily relied upon coming in the future.
Oh, for sure. And even in the next month or so.
Yeah.
So speaking to that, so during COVID, during quarantine, how are you better able to educate yourself as a musician and a teacher? If you want to just give some last final tips for us, for your listeners out there, for your new followers and for continuing followers out there, if there's any little tidbits you want to share with them, please share.
Yeah. Over COVID, I was tough trying to just stay connected and not just, watch Netflix all day. So I really plugged into professional development. I'm a huge believer in that. Sam Houston State University had a fabulous session. The Texas Bandmasters Association had an outstanding session. Earlier, I spoke about the virtual band director conference. I put that on. And every time, even if it's being reminded of something I had forgotten about or learning brand new pedagogical thoughts, it just keeps my brain moving and keeps my brain going. And I think that's critical in a time where everything moves so fast and now knowledge is coming out, daily, new knowledge about our profession.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I kind of stayed plugged in, was just with professional development, conversations with other band directors, and YouTube. I went all out. I bought microphones, mic stands, light stands. I really dug in because I talked about that unicornness. I really want to make sure that I'm as well-rounded as I can be to best serve my students. So I've really been playing around with lights and learning about like how to set them up and all that kind of stuff. So
And
it's been
that's
good.
fun and exciting too. I think we can't forget that. We gotta grasp this moment while we have it and take advantage of it. And it's fun learning new things. Our kids will always feel the same. So we need to
Mhm.
make sure that we are always in that headspace with them. So, John, dear friend, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you again to Solfeggio for allowing this conversation to happen. And I look forward to seeing you again next time on here.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, John. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.